Excellent.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Managing Change and People in Nonprofits. Just a slight reminder, a little gentle reminder, we've got Q&A enabled, so if you'd like to post some questions, please feel free to do so, and we'll try and cover them off during the webinar, and most certainly towards the back end as well. A little bit of housekeeping, if I may. And on the next slide there, Lawrence, what you
Yep.
can do if you'd like to, you can scan the QR code and that'll take you directly through to the Curve Consult LinkedIn page where you can follow us. And obviously from there, you can receive any sort of notifications on any future activity that we're running. My name is John Pritchard. I'm an engagement director here at Curve. And Lawrence, over to you, please.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I'm Lawrence Wood. I'm the practice lead for change management here at Curve Consult. And I'm also the Curve Consult council member on Curve's Philanthropy Council.
Excellent.
Okay. So, just a quick reminder of why we're all here this morning. Answering the question, how do we create positive experiences of change that drive engagement, adoption, and long-term success? And in the process of answering that question, we're going to be looking really at three key areas. So firstly, how do you create positive experiences of change? Secondly, the importance of leveraging different methodologies and elements from different change methodologies to ensure that you get the most impact for your investment, and through that you create the best possible experience for your stakeholders. And then finally, the importance of strategic leaders prioritizing people leadership over project leadership or project management when delivering transformation, because at the end of the day, a tool is just a dead piece of software in your system until someone picks it up and uses it to do something good. John, do you want to pick up and
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I thought we'd provide a little bit of an overview of who we are for people who are not familiar with Curve. I'd like to provide a number of slides just to give you a bit of an overview. So Curve, we're around 1,000 people strong, and we enable organisations to successfully deliver complex technology-driven change with confidence. And through the group companies that we have 6 business units, and we have a dedicated practice that works with the not-for-profit sector. Just next slide there, Lawrence, please. So a little bit about who we are. We partner with mission-driven organizations, and just an important point, we are not a not-for-profit organization. You are. And, we work very, very hard to deliver technology transformation that drives outcomes. And, we work very, very smart. We extend our partners' reach, and we create a lasting impact. And on a couple of slides' time, you'll have a little bit of an overview of the different types of not-for-profits that we're working with. But specifically, our purpose is we harness the power of technology for the good of our people, our customers, our society, and most importantly, our planet. On the next slide, what you'll see here is an overview of past and present customers. And as I said, we're trusted to help them with large scale transformations, and we really, really do think about the customer first. It's one of our key values, along with building the future, and most importantly, to do the right thing. I think organisations that have engaged with us historically really just see that through our engagements, that we do take care. We're quite passionate about what we do, and we're certainly not a very, very large organisation that sort of bring in the A team and then disappear once they've signed a deal. We're very much the opposite to that. We take pride in everything that we do, and we're very, very sort of diligent in our engagements. And as you can see at the bottom of that slide there, you'll see a number of the organisations that are trusting us to help them transform their business. On the next slide, I'd like to ask Lawrence to talk to it because it's about our philanthropy efforts within Curve.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. So, Curve as an organization, we're committed to using our skills, our expertise, and our position in the market to support non-profits to achieve a positive impact across our society. So we carry that mission through beyond the engagements with our clients and into a number of areas of work. And the one that I want to focus on here is our philanthropy council, where we find organizations that we can work with to support them to deliver their mission. So far, we have spent 303 days this year supporting local communities with volunteering days. We have a current budget of 500, although it's less of a budget and more of a target we're trying to get people to. And all of our staff members across Curve are able to draw down on those days for good causes as needed. We've worked very hard to get our 26,000 ISO endorsement. That's really important to us, and it demonstrates our commitment to social responsibility. Our staff have raised £31,500 off of their own efforts for good causes. Now, some of that is matched funding that Curve has provided, where we've said, if you can raise X from other people, we'll match it. But some of that is also money that they have raised independently, and we have done our best to support them, for example, promoting what they're doing through internal communications and so on. And then Curve as an organisation has donated over £1 million worth of support to the non-profit sector so far this year. So that's in IP, that's in expertise, systems, hardware, funding, across a different range of things. But we as an organisation are really committed to the mission that we set out to do.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. And how do we actually help charities? So specifically, we have three key areas: projects and program delivery, change management, which we'll dig deeper into today, and service management. Specifically, we have a thread that runs through those three areas around cyber and data as well. But typically, that's where we'll get engaged. And if we move on to the next slide, and how we sort of go to market, our approach is very much to help you ahead of the curve around strategic planning specifically, mobilizing a program, getting it off the ground, and really driving through that initiation aspects. And secondly, if you're further along, there's sort of a bit of a comfort blanket there. There's an implementation assurance that we can provide, and we've got specific skills that can help you unblock some of those areas. And then finally, if you're sort of in a more advanced position and after sort of a transformation, you're looking to optimize and to find those smaller gains, we can also help you with that performance optimization piece. And specifically around change, where it sort of plays out is we can help you plan for change so technology meets your real world needs. That's very much ahead in the business change sort of side of things. In addition, more along supporting your teams through the transition, ensuring adoption and also providing that confidence. And then finally, embedding that change so it lasts. It's very, very important to help you sustain and grow your impact. And if we move then forward, Lawrence. Thank you. And specifically, why are non-profits choosing us? Well, I think I mentioned earlier where I believe we're very, very different. This is through the commentary, through some of our engagements there. We see technology as a tool for impact. I think that's very, very important. It's an enabler. It's the people around the tools that make the difference. It's the experiences that we've learned over the time, and that we can share, that we can help you accelerate in certain areas and give you the confidence that we can walk hand in hand with you to get the job done. Secondly, we will help you maximize your return investment. We know these tools, these platforms, these licenses and people, they're not cheap. So we want to make sure that you get the maximum from it. We want to make sure that the charities, your trustees, have the confidence that any funds that are unlocked, you're going to get the greatest bang for your buck. And that's very, very important for us. And we take it very, very seriously. And then finally, and I think the most important aspect of it, we really want to embed ourselves as your team, a natural extension of your time, of your team, working client side and helping you get the job done. That's vitally important. And anybody that we work with, anybody that we bring in, anybody we put in front of you, you'll certainly see that through those daily engagements. Thank you, Lawrence. And a couple of examples here, specifically an example around change management, which we'll be coming on to very, very shortly with Lawrence. Here is an example of a specific challenge that I want to highlight. A typical charity here needed to modernize an outdated system. It was CRM on this sort of example. Obviously, they were struggling to get buy-in from the trustees, and it created a certain amount of uncertainty about funding and slowing progress around that sort of challenge itself. What we provided was, a selection of program and change consultancy, built a clear, compelling business case, and engaged trustees through workshops. And through that communication, we managed to gain their confidence. That unlocked the funding, and that created that initial momentum. And then the outcome there was obviously we put a big tick in the box, but more importantly, trustees are confident around approving the funding and embracing the change enthusiastically. So that's just an example of a real life sort of work through example. We've got some other sort of areas there of real world impact, but I don't think we need to go into detail. We can take that offline once you look at the recording. But I think it's probably in the right time to really dig deep and to talk about reframing change. And we'll allow Lawrence now, if that's okay, to take over and walk us through those areas specifically.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Just a reminder, we do have the Q&A open. So if anyone's got any questions, if you want to ask John anything about what we've just covered there, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will pick them up. But yes, as John said, let's get on to the meat of this the presentation, reframing change. So firstly, I want to be really clear what we're talking about, because a lot of people use the terms business change and change management as if they mean the same thing, and they don't. They are two distinctly separate things that work in tandem. They go hand in hand. They work together to deliver the result that you want, but they're not the same. And we'll cover the differences in a moment. Secondly, traditional change management starts too late. We're often engaged too late to deliver the full scope of what could be achieved for you as an organization. And that is, unfortunately, that means that there's a very small opportunity for us to have positive impact on projects when we are deployed too late. So in order to create positive experiences of change and really maximize the benefit that you're getting from your projects, the return on the investment, the level of success you achieve against your objectives, we need to view change management as something that needs to start much earlier in the life of a project. And we tend to take a 3-pillar approach with that. Before we go on to those pillars, though, I just want to clarify business change versus change management. There's really 3 areas that you can look at when you're doing transformation. There's people, there's processes, and then there's what I call practicalities. The people often say tools rather than practicalities, but there's a lot more to it than just tools, because there can be things in there like location, for example, which is a practicality of someone being able to deliver the processes that are part of their job role. So in terms of transformation, people, processes, practicalities. Business change is all about designing the processes and practicalities to meet your business objectives, whereas change management is all about focusing on engaging the people who will be impacted and getting them to adopt so that you get the maximum benefit and impact from the transformation you're trying to drive. So business change focuses on what is changing. Change management focuses on the people and supporting them through the change. Some examples of things that you do in business change, you will map out the as is state of the company, what you're currently like. You'll design the to be state of the organization, what you're trying to get to. And you might well look at the technical changes that you need to make, or the tools that you need to deploy to get you from as is to be. But in change management, we're focused much more on the stakeholders, on communications, on training. But in that specific scenario, for example, a change manager will come in and they'll do a change impact assessment between as is and to be to understand how your stakeholders, your users, your employees, or even your end service users will be impacted by this change, and what we need to do to support them to be successful through the change. So it's very different, even though they work in tandem with each other. There's lots of people who work in business change. They might not even recognize that they do, but they work in business change as, project or program managers. Or a common one that comes up for us is we're asked, what's the difference between a business analyst and a change manager? Well, a business analyst has got a really important role in business change, mapping out the as is and helping to design the to be. Change managers are the ones who come in and get the people to engage and adopt. So you're talking about people like change managers, learning and development specialists, business readiness managers, and so on. So there's quite a distinct difference between the two. The three pillars of change management then. So broadly speaking, people tend to view change management as change delivery. So once a technical solution has been identified, the build has been mapped out or scoped out, and we start to get into the building and deployment phase. That's when a change manager tends to be brought on and asked to support that technical deployment. Really, what we can achieve within that time frame is quite limited because we've missed a lot of the window for impact, where things need to happen earlier on in the project. So the first thing that needs to happen is change leadership within your organization. And I'm sure for a lot of you who are joining us today, you have to deliver leadership both upwards in the organization, and down through the organization as well. And that can be quite challenging, but it's important that that happens early on. So that leadership is not just about who do we need to bring on board to do the technical design and viewing it in a very technology focused way. You need to go beyond that, be engaging and influencing people at all levels, and looking at who's going to have influence and impact on the project, and how can you bring them on side, how can you evangelize them and turn them into net promoters or supporters, advocates for the work that you're trying to do. Then before you've even got into the technical design, there's a lot of change planning that needs to be done. Some of that is about how you're going to achieve the change delivery, but some of that is engaging people in the design process so that you can make decisions from an informed position. And unfortunately, again, something that we see very often with change management starting too late is there are issues that come up, barriers to engagement, or challenges that need to be addressed, things that could have been mitigated much earlier on in the project, much more simply, much more cost effectively, but end up requiring a really significant time and sometimes cost investment to deal with, because they're only identified too late in the project. And that's because you haven't had someone from a change management perspective involved in the earlier stages of the project. So change planning, really important. And then off the back of the leadership and the planning, you get really great change delivery. Things will go much more smoothly. There is much less effort required from a change management perspective when you've done that leadership and planning earlier on. People get a much more positive experience of the change that's coming their way. So those are the three pillars that we focus on. And this, just to kind of re-emphasize the point, please don't treat change management as part of technical delivery. It's not. It is a strategic enabler for that delivery, and it needs to be started before you get into even searching for the technical solution that you're going to choose, because some of the information that it can bring up will help inform that decision about what solution you go for. Secondly, use the change leadership to get others through the organization to be advocates for your change. It's really important that you get them involved and engage them early on in the project, early on in the defining design stage, so that they feel a part of it, and then they go away and they will promote that back to the organization. The most powerful tool that you have to make change feel positive is to bring key influencers in your organization on side and allow them just to go and do what they do naturally. But that will completely change how people in the organization view the transformation that's coming if you can get them on side early on. Use your change planning to identify risks before you start getting towards technical adoption, but equally use it to identify opportunities. If you're going to spend out a lot of money on a new system, there may be things that you weren't aware of, or when you're particularly at very senior management roles, then you might not have sight of some key information, some key struggles or issues that people are facing on a day-to-day basis, that you could very, very easily roll into the technical solution and make it an even more impactful and positive change for people. Change planning brings you those opportunities. And then finally, change delivery. Again, use a blended approach, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail later, but you can't do one size fits all change management. It doesn't work in most organizations, and in the non-profit sector especially, you've got a much more diverse range of stakeholders with a much greater range of drivers for them being there. So one size fits all change methods just don't have the impact necessarily that I think most people are looking for. That's not to say they're bad at all. They're certainly very good, and some of them have some great principles that you should use to help drive your thinking around how you deliver change management. But a lot of them are very process focused and outputs driven, and it's very easy to fall in the trap of following the rituals and not actually doing the work to make sure that you're getting the outcomes you're looking for from the outputs that you're creating. And that's where those methodologies fall down, is that they are process driven and outputs focused instead of being people focused and outcomes driven. So the true scope of change. Most of the time we speak to organizations and technology is the focus of the transformation, almost as if that's the end goal. And as John spoke about earlier, technology are tools for impact. They're not the goal in of themselves. You're not doing a technology transformation just to deploy a system. There is something that you're looking to get out of it. And so how well people engage with and adopt the change will determine how successful you have been. And if you just focus change management around the technology, you're not going to see that level of engagement and adoption that drives success to the level that you want. So this wheel on the right hand side are 10 areas of someone's job that can be impacted by transformation. And when you start too late, you can see there that the things that you can impact, the things that you can really have an effect on are quite limited. You're talking about the tools and systems. So that looks like being able to tell people what the system will look like, give them some training to use it. But you're not able to go much beyond that because you don't leave yourself the time to do it. So the scope of your change management planning must align with the true scope of the impact. If there are things on that wheel that are going to be impacted, you need to make sure that you leave enough time to do the work to support people through them. However, if you do start earlier on in the project, you've got the opportunity to mitigate a lot of the issues, you can drive early adoption, and you can actually have the opportunity to support people right through all of these areas of impact. So what does that look like in terms of time and effort? Well, if we think about the life of a project from its first sort of early concepts through to delivery and then sustainment activity, the purple triangle there is showing you that the scope of opportunity we have as change managers to positively impact the project and the stakeholders. So the later we start, the less opportunity there is for impact. The green line there is roughly the amount of effort that would be required for us to achieve the outcomes that we're hoping for. And I just move it on. You can see when we start early on with that level of effort, we can create a level of positive impact that exceeds the amount of work that's being put in. It's greater than the sum of its parts. Unfortunately, when you start too late in the project, we often have to put in an enormous amount of effort because a lot of the change planning work hasn't been done. So when we come in, there's a lot of things that we need in order to do the job that aren't there. So we suddenly have to bring a lot of effort from our side. We have to ask a lot of effort from the client side, a lot of time from people just to get the basic change planning that we need to deliver the minimal end result that we can achieve within that time frame. So you're seeing an awful lot of effort, an awful lot of cost, both internally and what you might be spending with a supplier in order to achieve really very little return. So before I move on to the next section, were there any questions, John?
Yeah, hi Lawrence. Yeah, we have got a couple of questions coming through actually. I don't know whether it's worthwhile posing it now or we wait, but let me just give it a go. How do you get leadership to prioritize change management when they see it as a nice to have rather than a necessity?
Right. Okay. So the first thing is I'm going to put a very bold statement back, which I'm happy to be held to. If you've got people in your organization who are in leadership roles and they don't see the importance of focusing on the supporting the people through a transformation, I would suggest you've got a bigger problem than the technology deployment that you're working on. That's the first one. The second thing is I think you need to reframe it in terms that they can really engage with. So talking quite specifically about how the project can optimize the returns that you're getting. Talk about risk mitigation in the project, so you're increasing the sorry, I don't know why that screen has gone on there. The resilience of the project, and really work with them on getting the buy-in. Of course, the big thing there is going to be getting them to buy into the vision of what you're trying to achieve. If you've got the senior strategic stakeholders, the senior leaders in the business, they've obviously got the business objectives they're trying to achieve. If you can tie in what you're doing to what they're trying to achieve so that they're bought in, and they can become advocates for the change, then that would be really valuable. But yeah, so that's what I would go to is make sure that you frame it in ways that they can take away and they can kind of present back to colleagues in terms of optimization and risk management, and also make sure that they're bought into the vision of what you're trying to achieve as well, and show them how it aligns with what they're trying to achieve on a whole organization level. But we will cover that in a little bit more detail as well later on in the presentation. So
That's great. Thanks, Lawrence, for that.
okay. All right, so I will pick up and move on. So very quickly, I'm sure that you are all aware of these challenges that you face in the nonprofit sector, and that most of you will have to face some combination of these challenges on a daily basis. The key thing I want to draw out here is what, in our experience, have been the unique challenges, or what is uniquely difficult for nonprofits looking to deploy really good change management. The first one, you tend to have a really complex stakeholder landscape. So the way that your businesses are funded, or sorry, not business, but your organizations are funded, is not like businesses, where you've got grant funding, you've got trustee boards, you've got levels of governance that other people don't have to go through. Down through the organization, you've got people who are there. We frequently see organizations that are built around job sharing, for example, where you've got, 2, even 3 people sharing a role within a business, because they are doing it sort of part-time around other things that they've got going on. You tend to have volunteers handling some elements of delivery. Volunteers are really, really driven by a completely different set of factors to people who work in private businesses. And your end service users as well, they've got their own challenges. For a lot of service users, who are getting service from non-profits, it's not really a choice. They're in often quite difficult situations, and so they really need you in a way that often users of profit-driven businesses don't need it. They have a choice of whether they go with it or not. So a lot of those things, a lot of the constraints that you're facing can really limit the capacity for structured change management. And you really, really need to get maximum impact for every penny spent. And we understand that, and that's part of what we're trying to help with, through this presentation. The key here is to make that change feel positive, and also to make it empowering for people within your organization. And we will go through that in a little bit more detail now in the next couple of slides. If anyone has anything that you think we've missed on those slides, challenges that you feel that you face that you want us to address and how you can overcome them, please do put them in the Q&A. We're very happy to answer them. Contact us after the webinar again. We're very happy to talk to you and give you sort of some tailored advice for your situation. So, how do we create positive experiences of change? I think the first thing to look at is what makes change feel positive and empowering versus disruptive and challenging. So if you engage your stakeholders early on, so they feel that they've had a voice in the decision making and they've had a voice in the design phase, it makes them feel like they have been empowered within the process, that they have some level of control over what is happening to them, and actually they can feel that opportunity of solving some of the challenges that they get on a daily basis, and it gives them something that they can be positive about and that they can look forward to. I think the other thing about engaging people early is you can position a transformation project as being something that is bigger and longer running than just a technology deployment. So when you engage people just at the point when you're doing the technical delivery, that's kind of all they see with it. If you engage them really early on and say, this is what we're trying to achieve with this transformation, there will be a technology deployment. That's one of the enablers, the facilitators that helps us achieve that outcome. It might be the biggest part of the project that's a facilitator, but they will be able to clearly delineate between the overall project and the technology deployment. And then if you have challenges in the technology deployment, they will be more, your stakeholders will be more resilient and more understanding of those challenges. And if you work with them, they can actually be quite supportive through overcoming a number of those challenges. So lots and lots of benefits of getting people involved early and really engaging with them. Don't be scared to go out and talk to people in your organization about what you're trying to achieve. Get them aligned to that vision, get them aligned to the mission, the objectives of the project, and get their feedback and their input, and clearly communicate back to them how you've used their feedback in the design process. So that kind of feeds into the next point. Clearly communicate with people at every stage. And if you've asked them to engage with you, if you've asked them to give something into the project, make sure that you feed back to them. Let them know what impact they have had on the project so far, what you're doing with that information, how has it affected your thinking. You don't have to say yes to everything they've asked for, but actually people are much more willing to accept something where they have highlighted an issue and maybe suggested a solution. And if you go back and work through them and say, we love the idea, but here's the challenges we're facing, here's why we can't deploy that right now, they go away with a level of understanding, and they might not be happy about it, but the time it takes for them to get past that kind of frustration or that maybe resilience that is generated is much, much shorter. If you don't involve them, you don't clearly communicate, they can become a real level of resistance. They can become a barrier to engagement across the organization that can actually stop an organization from deploying the technology that they were looking to deploy. And we have seen this in a very large organization. There was one group of stakeholders who were not engaged at any point with a technology deployment that would completely change the way that they worked on a day-to-day basis. And they just flat out said no. And the project basically ground to a halt until they could go and do a lot of engagement work with those people and try and get them past that point. And it delayed delivery for months. So really important to engage and communicate. The why being clearly explained, get people bought into why you're doing it, get them bought into the vision, get them excited about the vision. One of the benefits that you've got in a non-profit is that almost everyone who's there is there because you have a shared sense of purpose of what you're trying to achieve. And that gives you something really powerful that, private companies would love to be able to harness that kind of mission-driven focus within their own employee stakeholders. You will have much easier access to that. And remember to communicate the what's in it for me, that WIIFM at the end there, what's in it for me. Make sure you explain it not just at a strategic level, but also on a personal level for your stakeholders. And remember that messaging needs to be aligned to each of the different stakeholder groups for what matters to them. We said earlier about getting leaders and leadership involved early in the project, getting them advocate for change, really important. There's nothing so disengaging as stakeholders seeing senior strategic leaders be dismissive or disengaged from a key transformation project. Make sure that you've really clearly considered all of your stakeholders' needs and feed that back to them. For example, if you're putting together training, and there will be some concerns about will the training be accessible for certain people in the organization, make sure that you have told people there will be accessible training. Make sure that you've told them what formats it will be in. Make sure you've asked them, is that going to work for you, or do you need something else? And just accept that it might take more time. If someone says that won't work for me, I need something else, it might take more time to provide that. But the net benefit you gain from that small amount of extra time spent at that point is huge. One of the things that people really struggle with is cliff edge change. Everything is one way on Friday and they come back in on Monday and everything's changed. They can find that really challenging. So one of the best things to do is to look at how can you phase the change into manageable chunks for an organization. That can be done in a couple of ways. You can divide up the organization into groups and deploy through phases. And that means that you can look at each individual group and say, what else is going on in the context of this change? What else have they got happening? So that you're not trying to ask them to accept a change from maybe 2 or 3 transformation projects all at once. You can actually space it out and you can deliver their phase at a point when they've had a chance to go through another change, have a breather, get a little bit more settled, and then go through the deployment. Another way that you can do it is if you are going from not having a system to adopting a new system. So let's take a CRM, for example. If you've never had a CRM before and you're adopting a CRM, you can decouple technical delivery of the CRM from the adoption of it. So there might be a date when your CRM goes live and you can say to people, hey, our system is live from the 1st of July. But you might say to them as a group of teams, you have all of July to log onto the system, to look at it, to kind of understand how it works. If you've got any issues, you can come back to us. We can provide some additional support, some additional training, so you can get used to the system. You can work together as a team to figure out how you're going to use this tool collaboratively between you. And you can do all of that before it becomes an operational necessity that you absolutely use it. And then make them aware of what the actual date for adoption is. So you can say you've got all of July to play with it, but by the end of July, you need to have adopted it. Just taking the pressure off and giving people a window of adoption rather than saying this day it's going to be one way, next day it's going to be another, massively reduces resistance, massively reduces stress, massively reduces the overall change fatigue that people feel, and it makes them feel empowered. It goes back to that thing about being empowered through a change process. Make sure that you are getting feedback. So one of the other benefits of taking a phased approach is that you can get feedback from people who've just been through the change and you can use it. Be open to that feedback, be open to changing the way that you are delivering the next phase. If there's been an issue, if there's been a concern, if people are just giving you advice and ideas for how it could have been done better, be open to making those changes and implementing them for the next phase so that you can improve through the phases. And once again, anytime that there is feedback, make sure you've told people who have given you the feedback what you have done with it. Make sure they know that it has been valuable. Don't just allow them to submit information and then they never hear from you about it, because that's really disengaging for people. Finally, support needs to be available when it's needed. Now, we do really want to equip people to self-manage through any issues that they have come up when they go live on a system. But we need to make sure that they have access to all the materials and all the support that they feel they'll need in order to navigate that change. It's one of those situations where one size fits all is not necessarily enough. And so you need to take a blended approach to how you're providing that support. It's fine if it's, you have some specific needs and you maybe have a way of submitting support tickets and people have got to go through that system. It's fine to have those things, but we've got to make sure first and foremost, before anything else and all the way through the go live, that people know where the support is and that it's going to be available at the point when they need it. They can't submit a ticket and have to wait 2 or 3 days for a response to come back. It's got to be pretty close to instant. So that's how you make it feel positive. Some key takeaways for you from all of that. Start early. Okay, you can avoid so many issues, so much resistance, and actually it goes beyond that. You can create so much advocacy within the organization, so much positive pull for the change, rather than having to push people to it, by just starting early. And kind of profiling out the workload across the life of the project instead of trying to compact it all in just to sit around technical delivery. Listen first. Communications, people often ask, well, when should we start with the communications? And in their heads, they tend to think of the communications as a broadcast out of messaging. Communications and engagement starts right at the beginning of the project, when you're asking people for information, you're getting them involved. As with any good conversation, listen to the other person first, and use that to drive your strategic decision making. Make the change understandable and predictable. Okay, so make sure that you've got buy-in, make sure that people understand why it's happening, and give them clear information about what to expect and when to expect it. Make sure that your messaging is targeted to your audience's specific drivers. So there's another thing in there, MDII. They're motivators, they're depressors, they're interests, they're influencers. Those are 4 things that you can look at for how you can speak to an audience's specific drivers. And if you want to go into that in more detail, feel free to contact us. We can talk through that as a particular topic. Finally, empower people to be a part of leading the change. You can do that through change champions networks. You can do that with opportunities for them to be a part of the design, through providing feedback and insights. Make sure that you empower them and really celebrate those wins throughout the project. So more than just saying to an individual, thank you for your feedback, thank you for that thought, that suggestion that drove us forward, we can now do this. In your communications around the project, actually celebrate what's been done. We've had input from this many people on the design of the project. I just saw at the corner of my eye a quick question come in. Could I repeat, what does MDII stand for? Yes, motivators. So those things that get people up in the morning, that get them to work, that bring them in, that make them want to be there, those are the motivators. Depressors, those are the things that they find challenging, that drive anxiety, stress, etc. Interests, which for non-profits is really important. I imagine a lot of people that you've got working for you have got a lived experience of whatever the challenge is that you're trying to solve, but align to their interests, things that will grab their attention. And influencers, who do they look to? Who do they listen to? Who can you leverage a connection with to support them?
Lawrence, we've just had a
Yeah.
question come through.
Yeah.
I feel as if you may have covered this off actually, but what are some practical ways to tailor change approaches for different stakeholder groups?
Absolutely.
I feel as if you've covered it,
but it's really timely, that question. I'm about to move on to how to use a bespoke change approach. So I completely understand what you're asking for. Firstly, when you are, so just very quickly to answer it, practical ways to tailor change approaches for different stakeholder groups, how you communicate with them, make sure that you're looking at what's driving them, understand where they exist. That quite literally, do they spend all their time online? Do they prefer to be in the office? Are there certain tools which they use for communication more often as a team? Um, Look at the particular work that they're doing. Why might their work differ from someone else's? Uh, in a past role, I led a major digital transformation through a local government organization. And if you look at what the planning team have to do on a daily basis versus what the revenues and benefits team have to do on a daily basis, they're wildly different. And so what the planning team needed out of a transformation was very different from what the revenues and benefits team needed. So just by talking to them in terms of their challenges, their issues, their daily life, that really helped. In terms of methodologies to use for stakeholder groups, there's different methodologies. They have different benefits. Some of them are very intensely practical activity led, very ritual and output led. Some of them are very emotion led, supporting people in that emotional way through a project. And you get some that kind of sit in the middle that blend both. Really come and speak to us, because in order to give you a really tailored answer for your organization, we need to understand about your organization. But do look at the full spectrum of change methodologies. So we've said one size fits all doesn't work. Try and be more adaptive. Look at those unique priorities, the motivations, and so on. Speak to the audience's drivers. We will share these slides around. You guys can look at them in more detail. We've got there some approaches to dealing with staff, volunteers, funders, your end service users. And remember that traditional methodologies tend to be process driven rather than people focused, and just have that in your mind. So things like ADKAR. ADKAR is a great principle to make sure that people are aware of what's happening, to build desire in people for the change, to give them the knowledge and ability to succeed through the change, to do reinforcement work to make sure they don't fall back on old activities, fall back into old desire paths. It's a great principle. Unfortunately, it then breaks it down into a number of rituals and actions which don't work as a blanket approach across an organization. But you can stick with that principle, and you can look at the suggested activities and figure out what works to you and to what extent to use them. So because we've talked about this quite a lot already, I'll go straight into some key things to think about when you're creating a bespoke approach. Map your key stakeholders early in the project. The first thing that I will do if I come into any client and say, have you done stakeholder mapping? Do we have a clear picture of who is impacted and how they connect? What's their interest in the project? How much influence can they have on the project? Those things are really important. Understanding what matters to them. Again, what does success look like from their perspective? What is driving them to be in work? What will drive the motivation to engage with this project? Get into that detail and understand. Adapt your messaging, adapt your training to reflect each individual area. A one-size-fits-all training handbook, probably not going to be the best solution. Create the training, compile the various elements of training into role-based courses so that people are getting training that's specific to them. That's one great way that you can adapt the training. And as I said, ensure a mix of engagement styles. So beyond methodologies, beyond approaches, think about how your stakeholders want to engage. Do they want to see someone in person? Do they want to do things remotely? Would they rather hear it from someone they work alongside on a daily basis, or would they benefit more from having someone come in and talk to them? Think about these things within your organization. I'm just conscious of time, and I want to quickly run through the importance of prioritizing change leadership as well. So cracking on, many projects focus on tracking progress, not inspiring the people. So the amount of times we sit down and there's definitely an action log, but there's no sort of sentiment tracking or monitoring across the organization, no pulse surveys being done to understand where there might be concerns, where there might be issues. There's a really interesting piece of work that was done by Google over a decade ago now, but they were looking at why were they struggling with engagement with women of a certain age in Google. And when they drilled down into it, they found that actually they weren't engaging with the transformation that Google was trying to achieve, because they were really concerned about maternity leave and how that was going to impact their life. Google changed their maternity policy. Suddenly, massive engagement became one of the strongest engaging sectors within their business. So don't just track progress, don't just track activity, actually monitor the sentiment and the people that are going to be impacted. Remember that leaders are there to inspire. They're not trainers, you're not instructing. They're there to inspire people. Get your leadership bought into the vision and get those leaders to bring other people on board with that vision. Make sure they're leading by example. The worst thing you can have is a leader who's not living what they're asking other people to do. That massively disengages the rest of the organization. Ensure that leaders at every level of the organization own their role within the change. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, one of the most difficult things we have to get across is working with managers to ask them to incorporate some element of change management into things like their regular one-to-ones, because that's so much more impactful when they do that than us trying to do change to people from outside the organization. So it's really important that you engage leaders at every level of the organization and get them to own their elements of the change. And as we've said many times, involve people from the start, listen to them, engage them, give them a voice, empower them so that they become advocates and pioneering adopters of the change. So the key takeaways there: communicate your inspiring vision, lead by example, involve people from the start, empower leaders at all levels, and celebrate progress and build momentum throughout the life of a project. You don't want to just have the sort of final message of the project of, hey, we did it and it's been a great success. You want to build a rhythm of success through the project, a winning mindset around the change. And you do that by continuous celebration of the wins that are happening, however big or small they are, so that people feel a sense of positivity and pride, and they feel that rhythm of success building, so that when the change happens, they feel confident and positive about it happening. I'm going to include in the slide deck here some of the risks of not adopting or not leveraging change management to its full. I think these things are something that people will be able to pick up relatively easily just from reading the slides after the session. So I'm not going to run through those in detail now. Got some key takeaways overall. I keep saying it, but just make sure that your vision is leading the change, not the technology deployment. The technology is a facilitator. It is not what the project is trying to achieve. Embed change management earlier than you think you need to. Make change empowering, not disruptive. Make sure that people are bought into the mission and they see how it's going to improve their life, as well as the opportunities for the organization. Use a tailored blended approach to how you engage stakeholders. And remember that change leadership drives success. So leaders must lead, not just manage. They need to lead people and not just manage activities. And with that, I will take a deep breath and hand back to John for a moment.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. And very, very detailed overview there of change within the NFP sector. Thank you so much. We're happy to take questions now, but what we have done, we're actually going to be running a series of roundtables on the first working day of every month, just before lunchtime. And we'd like you to be part of the change community. You can sign up to that community via the QR code here. We'll obviously be sending you a copy of the recording as well and further information. But if you'd like to engage with us and create that change community, you can do so here. But we've got 3 dates for you. It's the first, in fact, if I just click through the next slide, actually, we've got 3 specific dates for you to think about. The 1st of April, April Fool's Day. Sorry about that, but we'll start on that day. Thursday, the 1st of May, and Monday, the 2nd of June. So if we just plant in the heads here, it's the first working day of every month, and that is going to be more of a drop-in community. We want to request your permission to engage with you on that topic, but it will only be on that topic and only be about the roundtable. So we won't be certainly spamming you. That isn't the idea, and it isn't the focus. I'm not sure if we've got any further questions coming through, but Lawrence,
Just can we
sorry, you're going to say something there. Carry on.
Yeah, I was only going to say, as Rob very rightly pointed out, those are going to be virtual roundtables, not in
They
person.
are. Yeah.
But yeah, they're not a presentation. We will bring some insights, we'll bring experience, but it's a very much more informal conversation. So you can bring some challenges, and we'll do our best to help you with them. And at the same time, hopefully, collectively, we can all share some knowledge that advances everyone's interests. So.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and really appreciate your time, spending your time with us this morning. And we're going to give you some time back if there are no further questions just before lunch. It's a beautiful spring day out there, and just to wrap it up, and it's very, very important. We focus on people, we deliver outcomes, stay positive, and stay ahead. And I've got my mug here, and it says "Stay ahead." So have a great day, everybody. We appreciate your time, and please engage with us in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Right.